Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 67, brought to you by the one and only, the legendary Black Belt Magazine. And sport karate fans, we are just about 1 month away from the Battle of Atlanta, the first North American Sport Karate Association World Tour event to come back in person since February of 2020 at the Compete Nationals due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Battle of Atlanta is also the marquee event of the very successful ProMax circuit that has been led recently by Holly Hamm and Joey Perry, hosting tournaments throughout the pandemic, and all of the promoters of ProMax have been doing an incredible job, and their advising staff and everything else with being able to keep sport karate around during the COVID-19 pandemic. Their marquee event is the Battle of Atlanta, coming up June 17th to the 19th of 2021. Black Belt Magazine will be there for coverage. We're going to be posting on social media, sharing articles, all the breaking news from everything going down at this massive event. And so to prepare for that event 1 month out, today's episode is going to be focused on some iconic performances from years past at the Battle of Atlanta. Now, these aren't necessarily the most historically significant forms that have ever happened at the Battle of Atlanta. Some of them will be, certainly, but these are primarily videos that I just enjoyed growing up, whether I was watching and doing the film study online, or whether some of these performances were performances that I was actually there to witness in person. There's a few of them like that in here, and we're also going to be covering a couple of fights today. I think there's 4 fights coming up at the end of the episode, so if you're a point fighting fan, hang on tight. We're going to be covering 4 fights, which might be a record for the Jackson Rudolph podcast. That's more fights than we normally cover. So we're going to be covering 4 fights coming up at the end of the show, and then we've got all kinds of forms and weapons routines leading up to that point. But without further ado, and what gave me the idea to do this episode is this video and this man right here. 2 weeks ago, we had episode 65 with Carmichael Simon, and he told the story of the first 720 kick ever done, not just in competition, but the first 720 kick ever done, period, because he had trained the rotation, but he did not throw the kick until he was at the Battle of Atlanta. Noticed that some of the WMAC Masters executives were going to be in the audience that night. He decided to throw the 720, obviously caught their attention, and became Kid Carmichael, the youngest cast member of the legendary WMAC Masters, which featured so many sport karate legends. And so this was the form that the first 720 ever was completed in. And back then, that was part of tricking culture. To be the first person to land something, you had to do it in your form to prove that you were the one who owned that trick. And Carmichael does that with the 720 right here. And most of the time we watch videos from YouTube. This one is actually on Carmichael's Facebook. So you'd have to find him on Facebook, his personal Facebook page, to watch this performance. This is the 1994 Battle of Atlanta. Carmichael would compete in his only adult season in 1995. So this was his last season as a junior, which is why, as you can probably tell, he looks a little bit younger. A sign of the times with a lot of the setup here, drawing in a lot of suspense. He's also about to do a move that's never been done before. So he's drawing up the suspense for good reason. And then now he's hit the pose. We're ready to go. Axe kick. Boom, 2 rotations, big crescent kick on the end of it. And look at the power and the technique on the punches coming out of it and then coming in through into that pose. And I assume that there was more to do after that. But that is the video that we have for Carmichael Simon doing the first ever 720. And a lot of the times when you see the first ever version of a trick done, it's not very clean. Good elevation, 2 good tight rotations, good extension on the outside crescent kick coming through. Trickers often call that a hook kick whenever it comes to the outside of their body, and call it a round kick when it comes to the inside of their body. Most of the time, both of them are crescent kicks, traditionally speaking. But that was very well executed technique there from Carmichael Simon. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into this episode with our YouTube playlist by looking at one of his contemporaries, one of his competitors when he was in the adult division. This is John Valera and his Kama form, his weapons routine at the 1995 Battle of Atlanta. You can see here, this is just before his Paul Mitchell days. And once again, a sign of the times, getting set up. Lots of suspense here in the beginning of the routine. Most of these videos today are going to be courtesy of Black and Blue Video through, I believe it's Karate Video Guy on YouTube. So make sure that you guys check him out. A great documenter of sport karate history. We would not have so many pieces of sport karate history if it was not for him, Wally Faulkner. So much love to Wally Faulkner for providing these videos for everybody to see out on YouTube. And then once again, tons of suspense here. And then as soon as he turns around, we've got the intensity. Again, this is the 1995 Battle of Atlanta, or at least that's what the caption of this video says. We see John Valera bringing in the focus, keeping the intensity. That's one of the things about a lot of these old school forums is that I got to be creative with my commentary and keep words going out there. You know, today, typically intro sequences only take 3-4 moves. Some people just back up and start their form. But back in the 90s like this, as we see John Valera taking off, huge split kick, finishing the kick before he even landed. And then we see the lights going off. Can you imagine today in the modern era with releases of the weapon and everything else, if the lights changed like that in the middle of the routine? That would definitely be something that a lot of competitors were not a fan of. And I don't know if Valera was expecting that to happen. But anyway, as I was saying, a lot of these forms from the 90s, there was a lot more suspense, both at the beginning and then look at this right now, even in the middle of the forms, whereas the pace of the game today is much, much faster and people want to get with it and get going, especially once the form has already started. But back in the 90s, it was very common to see those long introductions choreographed with the music, as well as those kind of slow breathing techniques in the middle of even creative musical extreme, or back then what was called American or open routines. Now we're going to look at another John Valera form. Now we fast forward to 1997. So we go from 95 to 97. Now he will be donning the black and white of the legendary Team Paul Mitchell Karate. And this is his forms routine, which Carmichael was most well known for competing against. But at this point, Carmichael was on to other things. He had retired doing WMAC Masters, Mortal Kombat Live Tour. And so in 1997, 1998, there were a lot of battles between John Valera and Mike Chat in the Grands. And then once again, we see a significant lighting change. And if you go back and you watch episode 65 with Carmichael, double 720 right there. Notice just 3 years after the first 720 kick, we're getting the double 720 by John Valera. I'm not sure that he was the first person to do a double seven. If Carmichael or John or anybody happens to be tuning in, go ahead and drop that in the comments. You can fact check us on that. Andrew Capelon, I know you're a fan of the show. We got to get Andrew Capelon on the show soon. I know that he would know. So maybe if that was the first double seven, let us know, but I cannot confirm or deny that. But I'm going to go ahead and rewind. We'll watch this one more time just because I got a little bit sidetracked there. But anyway, as I was saying, when this video started off, before I got distracted by the form here in the double seven, you know, at this point, we were largely watching a showdown between Mike Chat and John Valera as Carmichael had moved on. And then we see this, again, the lighting change here that is just so interesting, I guess is the best word for it, because today, you know, competitors now complain about just the way the lights are set up in the first place, let alone if the lights are going to be changing during the routine. So I don't know if that's something that is that was common back then. I know that in Carmichael's episode, he talks about how sometimes the lighting would change and you would never even see it coming. So I guess that's just something that they did as the production staff for the nighttime finals that the athletes just had to be ready for and be prepared for, which today that simply wouldn't be possible. As many weapons releases there are, athletes flipping upside down consistently on their tricking techniques. It would almost be a safety risk on some of those. If, you know, the lights changed and they couldn't see their landing, that could be very dangerous. Now we're going to move on to the 2001 Battle of Atlanta. We have a student of John Valera, Rudy Raynon, who would one day represent Team Paul Mitchell. But one of the things that I love about this performance is that right here, you can see the back of his uniform. He is repping Team Valera. So this is Rudy Raynon when he was on Team Valera, obviously coached by John Valera. And this is Rudy kind of showing the early innovation of the kamas, right? So Valera and Chat both kind of took kamas to a new level with switch grips and the speed that they performed at. But in this form, and then in the next form that I'm going to show you, we're going to see a lot of increased manipulation of the weapon that was really starting to change the game. I know that Rudy is obviously young in this video. I don't know exactly what age he was. Looks like maybe 13 and under division. But we see the manipulation of the Kamas, obviously a big 720 there. And then look at that, the reverse figure eights coming up into that little grip switch, into that little upward cut there. That's very nice. And this was kind of the first major Kama manipulation. And there's another one right there to the splits, all kinds of style, as always, from RU on Instagram, Rudy Raynon. And then we see the beach twist coming through into the cut combo, hook, aerial, right into some more cuts. I like that little type of illusion move there as he kind of wrapped the Kamas around each other as he started that spin. And so we see the creativity there from Rudy Raynon. And speaking of future all-time great Kama competitors that we saw at the Battle of Atlanta when they were very young, we're also going to look in 2001 once again at Mark Canonizato. Now, it looks like Mark Canonizato is a little bit older here. Obviously, it's the same year. So I would assume that Mark was in the 14 to 17 division because it did say this was boys' weapons. So it's the junior division. So I'm going to say Mark Canonizato was in 14 to 17. Rudy Raynon was the 13 and under boys representative. Obviously, I wasn't around in 2001 because I was 3 years old. So maybe the grands worked a little bit differently back then. But this is Mark Canonizato. We see him with the bleach blonde hair, as well as the red Florida Sport Martial Arts Academy uniform. That would go on to be a signature uniform worn by many champions that came out of Florida Sport Martial Arts Academy that most of the time would go on to represent different teams. Haley Glass comes to mind, who was from Florida Sport Martial Arts Academy, now representing Team Infinity. And we see Mark Canonizato here going to work. His flash kick was always 15 feet in the air. I'm pretty sure he came out of the womb doing flash kicks that high. And then we see the Kama manipulation going right into the gainer, which is very interesting. A combination of weapons manipulation with tricking. And then we see the kick combo. Shout out to Jeff Doss. We know that he's going to like that. One of the hosts of the Inside Scoop podcast over on Martial Arts Internetwork. Big fan of kicking, an all-time great kicker himself. And Mark Canonizato demonstrating the multiple kicks. And I love the side kick and then the change to the round kick in the hold position. I thought that had nice creativity and had a good look to it, good aesthetic. And then taking that immediately into the tricking combination after that. So props to Mark Canonizato for that routine. Speaking of junior weapons competitors, we saw Rudy and Mark in 2001. Let's rewind a year and go to one of my all-time favorite competitors, the youngest, to my knowledge, the youngest competitor to ever represent Team Paul Mitchell, and the youngest competitor, to my knowledge, to ever win an ISKA US Open World Championship. This is Wayne Dalglish at the Battle of Atlanta in the year 2000. Student of Casey Marks, so he's part of the Mike Bernardo training lineage. As anybody that has listened to me talk before, you know that my lineage goes from Bernardo to Casey Marks to Lauren Carney to myself, and Casey taught Wayne. So Wayne is kind of an offshoot of that lineage. It's less of a lineage and more of a web, as many kind of individuals as each of those people have trained. We see the 360 spin release on the knee with the catch, very ahead of his time. Think about it. Back in 1995, we saw really the first rotating release done in the air consistently by Casey Marks. And then now 5 years later, you've got someone in the 13 and under division in Wayne Dalglish doing a 360 spin catch on his knees. So he was very much ahead of his time. I love the intensity. Sometimes I think of Wayne Dalglish almost, and then you guys might agree or disagree with me down in the comments. Sometimes I think of Wayne Dalglish almost as like a young Gary Waugh. Like if you took Gary Waugh and you made him a little kid, it would be Wayne Dalglish, which is a huge compliment because Gary Waugh was one of the top weapons competitors of his era, beat Mike Chat with his bow form against Mike Chat's Kama form at the US Open. And Wayne Dalglish, I think that there's a lot of stylistic similarities there. And then obviously the intensity is huge. And then of course we see a whole lot of Casey Marks influence in Wayne's form as well, because he was a direct student of Casey Marks, the signature hand roll to the stab down finish. And then I believe that Steve Babcock, one of the founders of Paul Mitchell, that just gave him the standing ovation in the background there. That's a common trademark of Steve. You can see his standing ovations from just about anywhere on the mat because, you know, Steve's like 8 feet tall. But anyway, so there is Wayne Dalglish. I believe, yes, he's going to take that grand championship there, gets the plaque presentation. And then speaking of Casey Marks, you know that I can't name drop Casey Marks without showing off some Casey Marks. And so now we are going to see the 1999 Battle of Atlanta. This is the adult weapons grands. And then I love the look of Casey in this, the black gi top with the black hakama. A lot of times in previous years, she was wearing, you can find videos of her in like a red, black, and white hakama. I personally like the all black look. I think that it's a real nice look and complements a lot of her striking very well. And really, you can see a lot of the striking on display in this routine. Beautiful up, down, side to the powerful, intense sweep forward strike. We see kind of a hybrid back stance there, something that you would not typically see in an open bow form today. Obviously, this is a creative bow routine. It is not traditional, even though in the early going, this does look a lot like current traditional bow forms right up until here, where she gets into her signature. There's the release technique. She's been doing that at this point at this point, this is what, 1999, I think I said? Yes, this is 1999. So she's been doing that move for at least 4 years at this point. So that has become a signature of Casey Marks. We see the low reverse front stance there with the low thrust. And then we see the big finish here. And then one thing that I love about this form is that then she turns around and does the palm spin just because she can. The form was already over at that point. She does the palm spin just because she's Casey Marks. She can do whatever she wants to, right? So that was a great little bit of showmanship and performance there from Casey at the end of that routine. And then now, one of the things that I love and that I will always preach about Casey Marks, obviously in this video, she's now Casey Marks Nash. One of the things that I've always loved is the way that she was able to evolve over the course of her career, which gave her success over a very long period of time. It's not often that you can see a competitor winning in 1999 all the way back to 1995, but then also see them winning in 2013. This is recent. This is within the past decade. And then look at the crispness and the sharpness of these techniques. Beautifully executed up, down, side. And look at that. That is a picture perfect forward thrust, which I know doesn't seem like a big deal, but a lot of bow striking is very, very technical. And to be going full speed throughout a routine like this, which this one is a traditional bow routine, but to be going full speed on stage in an overall grand routine like this, and to execute with that level of precision to where if there was forward thrust in an encyclopedia of bow staff, that is the picture I would put next to it. That is incredibly difficult to do. And there's not enough people that respect that anymore. And then we get the signature Mike Bernardo ending there that has ended traditional bow forms in this lineage for, gosh, over 40 years now, is that over the head strike, low on the knee, and then coming up with the knee slap. Also, I want to notice that I'm going to pause this real quick because this was an absolutely stacked women's division. First off, how often do you see this many women going at it on stage from left to right? I believe that's Stephanie Figueroa on the left, Becca Ross, Caitlin Deschelle, Michaela Johnson, a very underrated all-time comma competitor, innovated a lot of the comma releases that we see today. Jenny Espina, a bow trick innovator, and then, of course, the greatest female weapons competitor of all time, in my opinion, Casey Marks Nash, right? And so we're going to see who wins this. I assume that since this was a video of Casey, and since it's Casey, that she was the winner. Yes. So Casey takes that win for the weapons grand at the 2013 Battle of Atlanta. Mike Sawyer of the U.S. Open presenting the award. And I always tell people, there's two people that I could watch them do karate all day. One of them is Casey Marks, and the other one is John Su. The other thing I like about this John Su video here, because he is my favorite traditional forms competitor of all time, is this was also back when Battle of Atlanta 2004 had the boxing ring for their nighttime finals. So a very unique feel for point fighters and for forms and weapons competitors alike. I remember some of the first Battle of Atlantas that I attended, 2006, 2007, they were still using this type of ring. And as we see John Su doing the signature pistol squat twice, going down and then coming back up, that's incredibly difficult to do. But anyway, as tricking became more and more popular, we actually saw some competitors, and I tried to find the video. I believe it happened to Josh Kahn. Tried to find the video, but I could not find it, actually crashing into the ropes on some of their tricking passes, which obviously was a safety hazard, right? And so very unique look here, and something that was really kind of short-lived. You know, we haven't seen this in the Battle of Atlanta since the mid-2000s, I would say. And then we see Jansu, just an absolute clinic on technique here, beautifully executed front stances, fully extended techniques, a beautiful side kick, a picture perfect box horse stance there. I mean, this was the epitome of performance traditional sport karate back in this era. And that's why Jansu was as successful as he was, is that he was so technically sound at doing this specific style of traditional sport karate, which I know that might sound contradictory when I say traditional sport karate, but that's truly what this was. Going back to the greats like Gabe Raynaga, this is something that Jansu kind of took to another level with the precision, the execution of technique, the extension, and made traditional form something that everybody wanted to watch. Even if you didn't care a thing about doing a traditional form, you wanted to watch Jansu execute a traditional form, right? And then obviously we see another one of his feats of leg strength here at the end of the routine with these kind of elevated splits, holding himself up, doing the bow, hands between the legs, and then again hitting that beautiful horse stance right after, and then more techniques to go. He's not done. He's got more techniques to finish this routine with. We see kind of the characteristic 2000s intensity shake at the end there. That was a common trick that competitors used to show the judges how much they cared about the routine, how hard they were going. And then one thing that I love about these black and blue videos is that they always show the results. They always show the winner. And then again, because it's a Jansu video, I assume that Jansu is going to take the win here. We'll fast forward a little bit just to make sure. As he does, yes, Jansu takes that men's form overall grand championship, and then a bow to everybody in the audience. Another one of the things that I love about Jansu as we rewind a year to 2003 is that not only was he a hard style Japanese inspired traditional forms competitor, but he was also a weapons competitor with the double whip chain, showing off a soft style or Chinese kung fu background. And this is so entertaining to watch. Jansu may be the best whip chain competitor all time for being, in my opinion, my favorite. I'm going to say my favorite because you can go on and on about who the GOAT of traditional forms is. That's very hard to do. So I'll just say my favorite. But not only was he an all-time great traditional forms competitor, but he had this in his bag as well. I don't know of many competitors in history that could do that with the more extreme wushu weapons and the more traditional Japanese style form. Names come to mind like Brendan Hewer, who could do it primarily with hard style form and hard style extreme form and soft style forms. But very few in sport karate history have been able to do it well with both the hard style traditional and then the more extreme style wushu. And then as we get to the end of the routine here, my favorite part, I don't know what the technical name for this is. I'm sure there's some type of a technical wushu name, but I call them the butt hops with the whip chain. Does it with both hands, spinning the other whip chain over his head. And then the beautiful stance at the end there. Much respect to Jansu for being able to do both of those divisions and to be able to do them at the highest level. And as we saw by that little graphic, he was about to be followed by DX, one of the greatest soft style competitors of all time. Speaking, we've been talking about GOATs and greatest of all times. We have the GOAT of all GOATs now, the greatest all around sport karate competitor of all time. Right now in May, we are celebrating, or we are recognizing, ALS Awareness Month. We lost Kevin Thompson, the greatest warrior in the history of our sport, to ALS early in 2020. And so we've got to put him on a pedestal here and highlight truly the greatest leader in the history of our sport. Team captain of Paul Mitchell is the eternal captain of Team Paul Mitchell. There will never be another captain because it will be Kevin Thompson forever and always. And then here, you know, a lot of people remember him for his point fighting because he was an all-time great point fighter, in many people's opinion, top 5 all time. But look at the power and the technique and the execution, the focus, the intensity of this traditional routine. And really, he did traditional forms unlike anyone else. The mix of the high kicking and the Japanese hand combinations, the speed, the power, he was kind of in a style of his own. We really don't see many competitors throughout history that ran this type of a hard style traditional form the way that Kevin Thompson did it. And it's truly a pleasure to watch. Again, I said there were two people that I could watch do karate all day, Casey Marks, John Sue. I obviously have to add Kevin Thompson to that list. I could watch Kevin Thompson do martial arts all day long. And then we see there once again with the nice low stance, jump spin to that knife hand chop, setting up the beautiful side kick. Many a fighter was on the bad end of that side kick there, catching it to the chest as he was pushing you away. The signature muscle pose at the end of the routine. Nothing but greatness from Kevin Thompson there at the Battle of Atlanta. I missed what year that was. If you guys could see it on screen, you might have been able to see it there. But now we go to the first Battle of Atlanta that I ever attended was 2006. And then I may have been at this nighttime finals, but I don't remember it or not. But I was at this Battle of Atlanta. It was one of the first NASCA tournaments that I ever went to. And now we have Kalman Choka. And I wanted to show this off because this is when he was still representing Team Elite, obviously before Paul Mitchell days and before his double sword days. So this is Kalman Choka on stage running a single sword routine, which I'm going to bet that a lot of our more recent viewers, by more recent, I mean people that have come into sport karate after 2010, you may only know Kalman as a double sword competitor, but he could throw down a single sword as well. And then look at that, sword on the back of the hand, spinning all the way through, inverting the sword right into a high-speed release. And then one thing I always respected about Kalman, look at the technique on the cuts. Full extension on every cut, beautiful lines, good stances, making sure that he is always having good traditional martial arts technique to complement the innovative sword tricks that he was doing as well. And this was a huge heyday for sword innovation right around that 2006 era with guys like Johnny Lascar, Joshua Corton. And then now we get to some of the fighting. We've got 4 fights coming up. We were just talking about Kevin Thompson and last week's guest on the show, Terry Creamer, episode 66 of the podcast. So we are going to watch Kevin Thompson and Terry Creamer, 2 all-time great point fighters, squaring off here at the 1997 Battle of Atlanta. We see Kevin Thompson, the smaller fighter, in the Paul Mitchell black and white. That's one of my favorite Paul Mitchell uniforms of all time with the shampoo bottle on the pant leg. We see Terry Creamer scores there. I believe that was on the back fist. I was looking at Kevin's pant leg, so I wasn't paying attention there. I'm going to pay attention more to the action now. And then we see both fighters standing pretty flat-footed, trying to get the other fighters timing down, looking for their opportunity. We see Kevin might have been trying to sit on that reverse punch there, look for the opportunity to fire that reverse punch in, and then he explodes off the line with the back fist. 1 point in the direction of little KA, Kevin Thompson, the total package. We've got 1 point both ways right now. Creamer takes off on the blitz. Couldn't tell if that defensive side kick from Kevin got in. The judges did see it. They called a 2-point defensive side kick from Kevin Thompson. That makes the score 3-1 in favor of KA. Throwing that side kick again. Looked like Terry Creamer got his arm underneath it. Now Creamer going on the offensive. Let's see which way that went. That clash went to Terry Creamer. So now it's 3-2. Quick reverse punch to the body. Terry Creamer's going to take that one as he goes into the ropes. That should be a point his direction. We've got a tie game, 3-3 right now. Let's see who can edge out ahead as we get to the later goings of this fight. Now we see Kevin starting to pick up a little bit of a bounce. Another defensive side kick. Looked like that one landed right on the chest. Beautiful technique. There's 2 points. That makes the score 5-3 for Kevin Thompson. Oh, wait. They didn't get it. It wasn't enough. It's 3-3. They did not call it. Looked like they waved that off for some reason. Looked to me like that was in on the chest. So I don't really know where that call came from. That was interesting. I guess maybe if we could hear the commentary on the video, that would change things. But we do see Terry Creamer scoring there, making this fight 4-3 in his favor. There's another defensive side kick attempt from Kevin Thompson, which it looks like they will score that time, puts him ahead 5-4. The white belt flies into the ring, signifying that time is up. And Kevin Thompson takes a buzzer-beating win with that defensive sidekick. 2 all-time great fighters on display there. Excellent little piece of sport karate history to watch those 2 go at it. And that was the senior fighting grand. So that was the executive division, which just shows you how much of Iron Men those 2 men were to compete for as long as they did. Now we're going to go to the 2007 Battle of Atlanta. They have now taken away the boxing ring. We're now in a normal sport karate ring. And I wanted to show this one just because I love watching Jason Borelli fight. And I feel like Ahmed Fauzi is a fighter that does not get talked about often enough. And so that's why we're going to watch this fight. No other reason than that. I just enjoy watching these two fighters go at it. We've got Borelli on the left, and then we've got in the Wasaru uniform on the right with the red sparring gi. We've got sparring gear, excuse me. We've got Ahmed Fauzi. Looks like he tried to slide in a defensive sidekick there, and no calls. It looks like nothing. Looks like Borelli goes for the spinning back kick there, but Fauzi had his forearms up in the way, so Borelli was not able to score. Both fighters, lots of fakes, lots of movement. And to me, it looked like that round kick might have landed on the back of the head. And when I was watching this before the show today, you know what? We're gonna rewind that a little bit. I want to see that round kick again, and I want to see if that landed. And because they wind up not calling it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the extra time here. We're gonna put this on 0.75 speed because YouTube can do that. And then we're gonna see if this round kick lands. See, to me, that's right on the back of the head. One more time. I'm gonna replay it one more time. To me, this round kick lands right on the back of the head. Maybe I'm blind, but he comes in, boom. It looks to me like that foot lands right on the back of the head, that it does not hit the shoulder. But the judges thought that it hit the shoulder. And one of the important things to remember, as I pause this real quick so we can get it back to normal speed, one of the things that's very important to remember is that it's very easy from this angle on a YouTube video where we can watch it in slow motion to be like, oh, that kick landed, he should have scored, right? But something that's important to remember is judges are seeing this from very different angles than what we are seeing this from, and they're seeing it only at full speed. So for the judges, that might have been a very difficult call to make as Borelli comes over the top with a beautiful blitzing left-hand punch right there. Then Fauzi tries to slide in another one of those defensive sidekicks. But anyway, so you can't be too hard on sparring judges because you have to account for what they can see from their angle, right? That kick was on the back of the head. So if there's a judge in the back, our back right-hand side of the ring, they're not going to be able to see if that kick landed on the back of the head anyway. So there's one call that you're definitely not getting, which can change the way that the point is scored or not scored, right? And so now we see beautiful stepping in sidekick there from Fauzi. I love the way that sidekick just folded Borelli right over, caught him at the perfect time, right on the belt. That is textbook for 2 points for Ahmed Fauzi. Then little kind of a sloppy clash there, nothing getting called as it shouldn't have been. Borelli hands on the hips. Fauzi fades back, throws the reverse punch. Did the reverse punch land or did Borelli land something? Nothing called. I agree with that call. That's nothing. Borelli throwing his kicks. It doesn't look like much of anything happened there either. I'll be surprised if there's a call here. Yeah, no call, timeout. And then the winner, I believe, based on the celebration, Fauzi was the winner of that fight. Had to have only been by 1 or 2 points. Very back and forth. Good action in that fight against two great fighters. And that actually was not the final. I believe that was the semifinal. But either way, I wanted to showcase those two fighters as obviously the show was about to transition to 13 and under weapons with Tiffany Larson. But we're not going to watch that. Now we're going to watch a very, very exciting fight. For more reasons than just the fight, we have two all-time great women's fighters, Nikki Carlson-Lee, Dottie White, Diamond Ring winners, legends of their era, rivals that are about to go at it. We've got Nikki Carlson in the black and white on the left, Dottie White in the red and black on the right. And then this is one heck of a fight. We see Nikki Carlson wanting to get that leg going early. Dottie White answers back, trying to pump the leg of her own, pushing her around the ring, using that leg. But Nikki Carlson counters over the top with the back fist, neutralizing the leg of Dottie White with her reach. As you can see, there's an obvious height and reach advantage in favor of Carlson-Lee. Dottie White doing a good job of using that sidekick there to keep Carlson-Lee's leg at bay. And then now attacks over the top with a flurry of punches. Looks like that is going to be 1 point for, Nikki Carlson. They must have called a counter there. I'm going to rewind that just because I saw the aggression from Dottie White. Again, that comes down to the angles. Just as she was passing by the center. That's why I didn't see it. Just as she was passing by the center referee, there was the back fist over the top there from Nikki Carlson-Lee. So that gives us a score of 2-0. Clash there. Looks like Carlson-Lee might have gotten the reverse punch in. Yes, she did get the reverse punch in, at least according to the center. So now we've got a 3-0 lead. Nikki Carlson-Lee expanding the lead now. And that's one thing that she was very good at, was maintaining those leads once she would get them. I don't know if anything's going to get scored on that clash. Yep, nothing at all. Oh, nothing at all. Nope. And then we see once again Dottie White doing a good job of neutralizing the kicking with, well, the kicking of Carlson Lee with that side kick of hers as Carlson Lee takes a tumble there. She was neutralizing Carlson Lee's kicking very well, but notice it's 3-0, all of Carlson Lee's points coming on hand techniques. And so it's the counter hand techniques that Carlson Lee is using right now to assemble this lead and try to win this match. Once again, the legs clash again. The hands come over the top, but that time it looks like they go with the more aggressive Dottie White. So now we should have a score of 3-1. Carlson Lee over the top again, lands what looks like it was a back fist and a reverse punch before falling out of bounds. She was still on the mat when she threw those two techniques, so I believe they will call that in her favor. We'll see what happens. Okay, well, I'm apparently missing calls left and right today. Maybe they didn't call. I couldn't tell if they called that or not. It looks like the center called it, obviously, but then it looked like he might have waved it off. I wasn't sure what happened there. We got 2 points going in the direction of Dottie White. This fight getting much closer now. Carlson Lee trying to use that leg again. Counters with the hands. Few extra shots from Dottie White there at the end, trying to secure the points. Center doesn't call anything, and then we don't get anything. Looks like there might be an equipment malfunction of sorts with Carlson Lee. Oh, look, it looks like she lost the contact. That's what it is. Anytime you see the center judge look to the ground like that and a competitor point to their eye, you know they lost the contact. Happens all the time in point fighting. Let's see. Quick little body punch there from Carlson Lee. She lands the body punch, gets the point. Getting a little bit healthier lead now. I think she's probably got a 2-point lead at this point. Again, with that one call, that was hard to tell which way it went. Not exactly sure what the score is at the moment, but that is the end of round 1. I believe this is the final, so we will get a 2-round fight here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we are going to get a 2-round fight. There's still over a minute left in this video. So they're going to take the break, maybe. A little bit of confusion as to what's going on at this point, so we're going to fast forward a little bit and get back into more of the action. Yeah, it looks like they're still taking their break. So maybe that wasn't, it's hard to tell. There might have just been an arbitration about some type of judging discrepancy that has caused this amount of time to be taken. Dottie White gets a point there. So there had to have been some type of arbitration that has been going on. But anyway, we're back to the action now. Quick back fist there from Carlson Lee and an extra little jab on the end there. That's where it gets interesting. And then we see Dottie White a little bit frustrated. And then Carlson Lee showing some aggression here at the end. And then here things are about to get crazy. So the fight is over at this point. The fight has been decided. Carlson Lee is the winner. And not a good look. Not something that you ever want to see happen in sport karate. Sure, it's entertaining, the drama and all this. But with two world-class competitors, you never want to see things getting that chippy. Late hits are one thing, but that after the fight is completely over. If you could hear the audio right now, you would know that the Battle of Atlanta crowd is booing, as they should, because that is not, the type of conduct that you want to see from two world-class fighters. But nonetheless, all the respect in the world for the talents of Nikki Carlson Lee and Dottie White. You hate to see a fight end that way. Yes, it adds a little bit of history because, like, oh, do you remember the Battle of Atlanta when Nikki Carlson and Nikki Carlson Lee and Dottie White got into it after the fight was over? Sure, it makes for a story, but we're martial artists. So at the end of the day, regardless of outcome, you always want to stay respectful. And it looks like on that end, both competitors were a little at fault for escalating that situation. Good job by the center referee breaking that up. And now we're going to move on. Speaking of world-class fighters, we have Raymond Daniels, arguably the greatest point fighter of all time, right up there with the likes of Steve Nasty Anderson and Brian Ruth, probably one of the greatest sport karate athletes to ever come out of the state of Kentucky, like myself. So I will say that with some pride. We've got Raymond in the black and white representing Team Paul Mitchell. And buckle in, everybody, because we've got a 9-minute and 41-second grand championship fight coming up. We see Ray in that shampoo bottle uniform that I love so much, joined with Coach Don Rodriguez. We see Brian Ruth in the signature purple and yellow of Team Straight Up with a fellow legendary coach, Joe Greenhall, getting briefed from the center judge here. Center judge laying out his expectations for the match, saying he wants a good, clean fight between these two rivals. because he knows that these two rivals do have a little bit of a tendency to get chippy. We see Ray with his typical antics before the fight begins, getting himself hyped up, bouncing side to side. Brian Ruth very calm and collected, ready to go. He means business. And here we go. Raymond Daniels starting on the outside of the ring, moving into the center quickly, working the fakes, that signature swinging front arm, takes off with the blitz. Looks like Brian Ruth may have landed a sidekick there. We'll see what the judges see. None of it landed. Ray working the fakes again, that signature kind of disorienting front hand movement, and then the beautiful jump spinning back kick lands right on the chest of Ruth, pushes his whole upper body back. That should definitely be 2 points, and it is 2 points in favor of Raymond Daniels as he struts up and down the side of the stage to receive his points. And I would say that this was the height of Raymond Daniels' confidence. He actually got a little bit more tame with age. But you see here, lots of showmanship between the points, lots of parading himself around the ring, letting everybody know that Raymond Daniels is the one fighting right now. Looks like he might have received a warning there for something. Both fighters still feeling each other out a little bit. Ruth comes in. Ray tries to land that front hand over the top, kind of a hook punch, but Ruth hit down to the body, it seemed, and scores there. Ruth wanting to be aggressive again there, but pulls back at the last second. Hard to see if that jump spinning back kick attempt from Raymond Daniels landed. We'll see what they call. They call 1 point on Ray, or at least the center did. Center was calling 1 point on Ray, which would have been for that follow-up reverse punch, but no points get called there. And then after that clash, looks like 1 point in favor of Raymond Daniels. He was able to strike first in that clash. And then coming over the top again, quick back fist, following it up with some insurance techniques, as we call it. That should be another point in favor of Raymond Daniels. And they called 2 there. So I believe it was a rule at this time. So I don't know if this is like a super fights division or if this was like the regular overall, but I think that the 2-hand striking combination could actually earn you 2 points, which is very interesting. I don't know if fighters today would like that or not. If you're a fighter today, why don't you go ahead and drop that in the comments? What do you think of getting 2 points for a 1-2 back fist reverse punch hand combination? I'm not saying that I'm for it or against it. I'm saying that I don't know. I don't know if fighters would like that or not. Clearly, it was playing to Raymond Daniels' benefit here in this match. And then it looks like we have some type of other scoring discrepancy going on here. Sometimes I believe that the corner judges are using the flags, red or white, which at times can get a little bit confusing when the center is trying to figure out who's who and who's where and all that. Overall, not too big of a deal, though. We see Brian Ruth steals a point in there, trying to form a little bit of a comeback because we do know he is down in the points right now. Throwing that big axe kick from Raymond Daniels, obviously comes up short. Coming up over the top with the hand techniques, goes to the ground. Looks like a defensive side kick attempt there, maybe even more of a defensive back kick. Landed a little bit too low from Brian Ruth onto Raymond Daniels there. And after the injury timeout for Ray to recover the nether regions, we've got Ray firing over the top quickly again with the hands. Looks like he will score on that exchange, and he does. And then we see Ray consistently going over to that edge of the ring and kind of pacing up and down, a little bit of showmanship there. Holding the hands very low. Maybe that's a little bit of taunting Brian for hitting him low beforehand. We see Brian maybe playing a little bit dirty there, tripping up Ray right after Ray was walking over him, trying to swing the momentum in his favor a little bit more. That was a sign of the times back in the 2000s like this. You'd see fighters do little things like that. Nasty Anderson in the 90s was a legend at doing that. Little things to just kind of throw the other fighter off their game. We've heard Terry Creamer and Richard Plowden talk about that on the podcast before, telling their stories about fighting Nasty Anderson, and Brian Ruth doing a little bit of that here. Goes for the huge ridge hand, but comes up short. Looks like Ray tries to land another one of those signature spinning back kicks. And we will see what the judges score here in just a moment as Ray continues to pace up and down the side of the ring. No calls there. Ray, little front hand fake, and then coming up over the top. And then it looks like Brian Ruth was going to go for the wrestling takedown there. A little bit of showmanship, again, maybe trying to get in Ray's head a little bit, or maybe just playing around, who knows. And then we see again, Ray maybe a little bit shaken up. I didn't see exactly what happened there. Maybe took a shot to the eye. Looks like he's holding his face a little bit. And Ray's right back to it. So we're good to go. Ray gets a point in his direction. And Ray trying to throw that spinning kick again, now moving around the outside, and then aggressive with the hand techniques. And look at that, how quickly he got in and then back out. We can see that now with his MMA striking game. He's currently fighting for Bellator MMA, just won his last fight in dominant fashion, showing off some wrestling skills as well. But that's one thing that makes him and other sport karate athletes that have transitioned to MMA, as Brian Ruth goes for a ride over Ray's back there, is their ability to get in and get out, to get in, throw fast, powerful techniques, and then lean back out away to make sure that they don't get hit themselves. Ray was obviously an expert at it all the way back in 2002. And then now he's using that in his MMA game to be a successful Bellator fighter. Now we go on to round 2 here. Ray appears to have the momentum and the lead. We see another arbitration discrepancy of sorts. Coach Don Rodriguez on stage barking something at the center referee, as any good coach would, to make sure their fighters being treated the way that they should be. You should always respect the center judge, but if you notice, a lot of the great coaches will speak up to the center when they need to. Don Rodriguez, Joe Greenhall, and there's others, of course. See another clash there. And then Brian Ruth consistently kind of now at this point, kind of going into that clinch, maybe trying to show that he's being a little bit more aggressive, which is why he's clinching with Ray after the fact, maybe trying to earn him some points that way. Or it could just be, again, just trying to throw Ray off a little bit. And if he gets in close to Ray and pushes on him a bit, maybe that tires Ray out a little bit. But prime Raymond Daniels at this time, this is a young Ray. He wasn't going to get tired. So any type of strategy like that was not likely to work. Ruth attacks quickly there. Didn't look like really much landed, but because of Ray spinning to the ground, sometimes you'll see a call there, but it didn't look like anything landed. Even there, Ray comes through. Looks like we've got a call. And a little bit slow with the call. The judges in this match, no calls there though. And then Ray going for the cartwheel kick. You know that he's ahead in the points if he's throwing a cartwheel kick at this stage in the fight. Obviously, the cartwheel kick doesn't land. We've seen it landed a few times. I think the last time that I saw a cartwheel kick land would have been Justin Ortiz in team fighting at the U.S. Open several years ago. He landed a cartwheel kick towards the end of a team fight against Team Gypsy. I remember that fight well. So there was that cartwheel kick that Justin Ortiz landed. But really, you don't see cartwheel kicks very often at all. We see Ray stepping in with the back fist there. Ruth obviously throwing a hand technique of his own. Maybe he got there first. Doesn't look like there was much of anything called, more of a clash. Body punch from Ray. That should definitely be a score. And it is. Oh, it looks like they might have scored the combination once again there from Raymond Daniels. And now Ray showboating a little bit with his fighting stance, the arm movement, attacking over the top as Brian goes for that spinning back sweep. And then it looks like the fight's over as Ray takes off his gloves, pounds his chest to celebrate. And then one of the things that I love about this is obviously it was in Ray's Paul Mitchell days before what is known as the Exodus, when Ray left and went to Straight Up and would later fight for the legendary Team All-Stars. But one thing that I love about this is the camaraderie that we see with Ray and the rest of the team. We see Coach Don Rodriguez. We see the late, great Gerald Dawson, Steve Tirada, just so many. We see the tall Steve Babcock coming in from the side there. We see the whole team gathering together to celebrate Raymond Daniels' victory there. So we see the thrill of victory on one end, and then the agony of defeat on the other, with Brian Ruth kind of wiping the blood from his nose as Joe Greenhall ushers him off stage. And then Raymond Daniels is your 2002 Battle of Atlanta PKA Challenge Match champion. So that explains the 2 points for the multiple hand techniques. It was a PKA challenge match, not just a normal NASCA point fighting match. And so we see Raymond Daniels taking a win there over another all-time great legendary fighter, Brian Ruth, one of the best of his era as well. And if that does not get you excited for the Battle of Atlanta, then I don't know what does, because that is an action-packed show full of all-time great forms, weapons, and fighting performances. And that story will continue. The legacy of the Battle of Atlanta will continue coming up June 17th through the 19th of 2021. Once again, Black Belt Magazine will be there with coverage, and there's going to be a lot of point fighting for my point fighting fans at that event. There is a special night show on Friday night called Friday Night Fights that is going to feature several of the Battle Mania fighting divisions. So there's going to be numerous point sparring divisions. tag team sparring, mixed doubles, I believe. Just so many different interesting sparring divisions that are going to be showcased, in addition to the next Pro Point, where the matchups have been announced for the upcoming Pro Point that is going to take place at the Battle of Atlanta. I believe the fight headlining that is going to be Christian Rivas of Team Legend versus Ryan George, the Pro Point 4 winner of Team Dojo Elite Power. That is an excellent fight, and I cannot wait to watch that match, not to mention all of the excellent forms and weapons action, as well as the NASCA fighting brands that will take place in the Saturday night Battle Zone finals. So I can't wait to be there. I cannot wait to be at the event. I can't wait to be around Sport Karate again. I hope that you guys can't wait either. I hope that this gets you excited. For more information, stay tuned to blackbeltmag.com, as well as right here on Facebook, our social media channels, or if you're watching the Jackson Rudolph podcast on our YouTube channel at the Jackson Rudolph podcast, head on over to blackbeltmag.com for all the latest news and updates surrounding the Battle of Atlanta, as well as a preview article with all of the major storylines for the adult division headed into the Battle of Atlanta. So be sure that you check out our recent preview article. Just go to blackbeltmag.com, click on Sport Karate, scroll down there, and then some of the recent news for Sport Karate should be that Battle of Atlanta preview article. But now that everybody is hyped up for the Battle of Atlanta, I'm hyped up for the Battle of Atlanta. This has been another film study episode of the Jackson Rudolph podcast, episode 67, and I'll see you guys next week. I can't wait.